What's up, guys? Welcome to another series of videos. I'm going to talk in depth about direct anchor belaying. This is for in the situation when my leader, the person who's going to lead the next pitch, instead of belaying off of my belay loop, I'm going to attach them to the anchor and directly belay off of some form of my anchor. I'm planning to do a couple parts of this series. There may be some new videos added in, but the main types of videos in this one, I just want to talk about pros and cons and times you can use this. And in the next video, I'll talk all about like different anchor configurations. And then in another video, I plan on talking about how to belay someone, or like the different ways you can belay someone off of this anchor. I just want to preface this one with this is an extremely advanced skill. It's kind of new to the US, this concept of belaying. It's a bit more prevalent in Europe, and you also will see a bit more of, it seems like the ACMG up in Canada has been doing some testing with it. That started about 10 years ago or so. And so I wanted to just make some baseline videos on this technique to introduce it to my audience. But this isn't something that you can just go out and do right away, because there's a lot of different configurations and a lot of different belay styles and a lot of different pros and cons to using this technique. And so really the best thing you can do is hire a guide that has been trained in this in some way, and just go out with them and work on this. Make sure you're setting everything up right and tying the knots correctly, and that you understand the different forms of belaying and where to employ all this. So I'm just showing you examples in this video. So why would I want to belay my lead climber off the anchor? There are a few reasons for this. The main one is if there is a chance of them taking some sort of large factor 2 fall onto the system. So if I were to belay off my belay loop, and I'm going to use my ATC as the representation here. We all know if I thread the rope through and then they climb up and they fall without being attached to the anchor, I'm going to be pulled down. And the distance of fallen, if they're 10 feet above my anchor, they fall 20 feet with 10 feet of rope in between them. That is what we call a fall factor 2. And so that's an extremely violent fall. It's very hard to actually get yourself in that orientation, the body orientation, to actually catch that fall in this more traditional style. And it can just be extremely violent, and it's already kind of the worst case scenario. So this is a technique that you can use to avoid that worst case scenario. Now in the past, we've done stuff like taking a quick draw and clipping in as a Jesus piece for that climber. Here's the climber going to my rope, clip it in above, and then I can pass this through whatever belay device I want. And this is kind of like I guess you could say a standard that we teach in all multi-pitch classes and whatnot. And while this does have quite a bit of use, and it can be useful, it also has a few drawbacks. So there's some bigger ones like putting a factor 2 fall, or a 2-to-1 force fall, sorry, on one bolt of the anchor, which sometimes isn't the best. You know, in general, one of the considerations we have for using this system is we should be on bomber pieces of gear, like 2 bolts that are just unquestionably strong. This is not sort of a system that you use on like a trad anchor, but it does put extra force on that one bolt. Some bigger consequences are if I am close to the bolt, like in this example, here's my tether, I can easily be sucked in the event of a fall. I mean, their falls are pretty violent. And something like that can happen, which depending on your configuration, it really doesn't help with keeping enough friction to arrest the fall on the climber. This can be a very bad situation. If this carabiner does happen to come unclipped, then we have the same issue as before, so that's another thing we want to be worried of. In addition, if I'm using like a gree or some sort of ABD, then the camming device in the gree can get pushed up against the carabiner here, and then same deal as when you like go super high up on any sort of lead fall. It can prevent that cam from engaging on any sort of ABD, and then you have the same problem there. So while this is okay, especially if I can get myself some space from the anchor, like if I have a lower point to stand on, maybe like way down here, then I have more room to move up and capture that load of the force of the falling climber. But if I don't have that option, then that could be this could be a way on preventing that and keeping a solid belay. So that's really one of the biggest reasons for using this technique of belaying off the anchors when you do have that possibility of a large factor 2 fall. The quick draw, again, if I'm just really close to the anchor and that quick draw is not really doing too much for me, this could be another example. There are possibilities where kind of the best case scenario is just not to fall until you get that good piece of gear in too. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's climbing, and climbing's very dangerous. So sometimes you just have those situations. A big example is if your anchor isn't unquestionably bomber. And so if we talk in more terms of a trad anchor, trad pieces in general aren't multi-directional. Sometimes you get like a horizontal crack running across and then you have multi-directional pieces. That has a bit more room for debate in there. But for now, when we're building this or using this technique, we want equipment that is unquestionably solid. And so that's going to be either 2 bomber bolts like so, or 2 bomber ice screws. Ice screws, as we know, can be very bomber going into the ice, and they're all multi-directional pieces. That's kind of more or less the criteria that we want for these types of anchors. Another great part about this anchor system is that when I'm like sitting at the anchor, if there's a large overhead hazard that I could be pulled into in the event of a fall, like if there's a big bulge of rock above me, or we use this in ice climbing a lot also, if like generally you're climbing out and you're in a sheltered spot so that way the leader knocking ice down, it doesn't hit the people underneath. This is where this belaying off the anchor could be really nice, because instead of getting pulled off my stance in a really violent fall, all the force just goes onto the anchor. This moves along with the gear inspection also. You know, if I have one spinning bolt here and then one more solid bolt, I'm probably gonna belay using the more solid bolt versus the spinner. And just like going up there and making sure everything's okay, you know, works for a good visual inspection beforehand. So that's going to be the end of the preface video for me. Stay tuned for the actual videos talking about how to build the anchors and use this technique. But I just want to reiterate that it's a very advanced technique and you need some mentorship in this, preferably some sort of certified guide. This is something that if you have your normal mentor that you go to that's been climbing for 20 years, they probably aren't super aware of this technique and they probably haven't done a bunch of research on it. And I don't want to like demean all your mentors out there, but I do want to say that this specific thing is new to the scene in America, and you can mess up quite a bit with this and cause a huge issue. So seek out qualified, certified instruction for this. I'm definitely happy to do that. We can go out and talk all about this for maybe a full-on day. Really, I can ramble. You guys all watch my videos, you know I can ramble. Stay tuned for the next videos. Forbidden peak. Look at it.